Loving and teaching children is not for cowards or slackers. It's a monumental effort that requires endless hours of dedicated learning and practice, all on a foundation of faith and courage. Sounds daunting, but it's fun. Just one part of loving and teaching, for example, involves the use of consequences. If a child repeatedly disregards spoken or written instructions regarding how to be loving and responsible, that proves that words alone are not enough. It's not an accusation of the child. We're not condemning the child. We don't use consequences when we're frustrated or desperate. No, just if saying a thing isn't enough, then consequences are next. Imposing consequences often can make wrong choices unpleasant enough. We're not torturing the kid, just unpleasant enough that a child is motivated to choose more wisely. That's how simple consequences are. There is never any unkindness in administering consequences in a loving way. Consequences without love are only punishments, which benefit nobody. True consequences, however, are still not particularly fun to give to a child. No child says, "Oh, thank you, Mom, for giving me a consequence and teaching me." By definition, children strongly tend not to like consequences. So, when parents give consequences, children often respond with resistance, arguing, disapproval, sighs, all the stuff you've seen before. No parent enjoys receiving that feedback from a child. So most parents avoid the entire mess by not giving consequences at all, and then everybody loses. It could sound fun, right? Not giving consequences. But without them, children tend not to learn. So their lives then become chaotic and unhappy. They don't learn to be loving and responsible. And that's not really living at all. But parents who give consequences have even more to deal with than just the negative reaction of their children. If, for example, parents withdraw their child's phone as a consequence, well, the word spreads like wildfire. And other children and their parents are soon saying things like, "Did you hear? Bobby's parents took away his phone," like it was taking away his life or not feeding him. Then the child tends to be, and this is what other people are saying, that he'll be socially isolated. How will he talk to his friends? How will he do his schoolwork online? It goes on and on what people say if you withdraw the phone from your child. And these things are said in a tone that suggests that without his phone, little Bobby, who lost his phone, will unavoidably shrivel up and die on life support, as though food or water had been withheld. A great many societies in the world have become so accustomed to enabling and entitling children that if a child doesn't have every privilege they demand and every privilege that the other kids have around him, other children and adults consider that a form of child abuse. Really? Think I'm exaggerating? Within the past several weeks, a mother told me that she had imposed a tiny consequence on her son, who was restricted from privileges for minutes. And when he mentioned this in passing at school, that he had been restricted from privileges, not hit, not starved, the teacher reported the crime to the local Department of Child Services. This is happening all over the country now. A formal investigation was launched, and one of the possible outcomes was removal of the child from the home, all because he had been confined to his room. That's it. No handcuffs, no barbed wire, no poking him with a stick, for less time than it takes to eat a sandwich. Really, this is becoming more common. People are losing their children because of child services for crimes like letting their children play outside in a neighborhood playground that is 2 minutes walk away. The kind of thing that in the old days we did, well, at age 8, I roamed all over the city. I knew the city as well as the cab drivers did, and I was safe. And the statistics show that in most neighborhoods, children are just as safe now, possibly more safe, because of the overall fear of our society of hurting a child. With that kind of outcome, child services getting involved, for example, even as a remote possibility, how many parents are frightened to step outside the mentality of the herd that is entitling children, which is marching their children straight off the cliff, where entitlement and unhappiness are a virtual certainty? The herd, the overall approach to parenting in this society, is wrong. And that's hard to stomach, and it's certainly hard for people to say, and it's hard for people to stand up to. The herd is wrong. But what parent dares to be the one who says it or who is different? This is sobering. Brief story. There was a lady named Nawar Inayat Khan. May have pronounced her name wrong. She was an Indian Muslim raised in England and France. She wrote poetry and children's stories. In World War II, she volunteered to serve as a radio operator in France, relaying information back and forth between the French resistance and the British military. She volunteered even though radio operators in France were vigorously hunted by the Gestapo and worked for an average of 6 weeks before they were killed. Short lifespan. The training was brutal, but she completed it and went to France despite the objections of many people. In France, she transmitted intelligence for 4 months before the Gestapo captured, tortured, and shot her. And her last word was freedom. This remarkable woman embraced all the difficulties and risks that came with accepting her assignment. She gave up her comfort and her life to make a contribution to the freedom of the world, and we are touched by her dedication. As parents, are we not willing to accept all the difficulties and risks that come with our responsibility to teach our children how to choose the ultimate freedoms of love and responsibility? She gave up her life for freedom. Are we willing to give up the approval of other people? Are we willing to endure some criticism for the freedom of our kids? Even when others might not approve of what we do, if we're not willing to make sacrifices as parents, the world will not step in and love our children as they need. The schools won't, social programs won't, and the government won't. This Indian woman did not possess obvious outward signs of bravery or risk-taking or other qualities useful in her role as a spy, but she made up for those deficits with an abundance of commitment to completing her mission. Similarly, you might sometimes wonder if you have what it takes to be a parent. But parenting doesn't require special gifts. What is required is commitment and a full-throated willingness to learn. We can learn how to love and teach our children. Now, go to realloveparents.com and learn how to be a hero to your children, how to free them, and become a hero to the world. You can do this.